Welcome in, latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Michael Bratton. Go by SEC Mike on the Twitters. And our great friend, Stephen Lassan, senior editor over at Athlon Sports. He's back to make his predictions for the upcoming weekend in the SEC. Stephen, how's it going, man?
Mike, I'm fired up. Another weekend of ball. Man, it's hard to believe it's week 6. It's a little smaller slate than usual, but that's when the chaos happens, isn't it?
It is. And so because what Stephen just hinted at there, a lot of teams on the bye. And we love to be the SEC show that actually touches on all the SEC teams, not like some of the others that just hit the big boys. So even the teams that are on a bye, we're going to do a little, touching on what they need to be working on this bye week. So we're going to be able to hit on all 16 on this episode before Stephen reveals his predictions. But as always, we got to remind you guys, we're brought to you by MyBookie, the online sportsbook. Go check them out. They're the presenting sponsor this football season. Promo code SEC. You can see it at the bottom of the screen all football season long. Go check them out, mybookie.ag. Promo code SEC to get you up to a $500 wager, a free wager, essentially. So let's say you put in $100, you put in that promo code SEC, you get your pick wrong, MyBookie is going to give you that $100 right back into your account so you can keep on playing. But if you hit that 100, just deposit it out and hey, you just won you $100. So go check them out, mybookie.ag, and don't forget, most importantly, that promo code SEC. All right, Stephen, Shane, I should blame him because it should have been me. I should have double checked it. But the weekly pick'ems, you are currently tied with the Cousins, I believe. The Cousins are beating all of us, Stephen. So the Cousins are going to have their pick in tomorrow. But you are in second place, if I'm not mistaken. There's pressure. There's pressure. You got to keep us up, Stephen. How confident are you in your predictions this week?
I'm feeling okay about the winners, Mike. We took some losses last week, but we're going to bounce back, I think, this week. I will say there is a lot of pressure. It's kind of like, being in a race here, and like you got, people beside you and people behind you. You can see, the person in the lead. So, Mike, we're feeling the heat. But conference play is my favorite time of the year, so I'm hoping that maybe we can pick up some momentum here and get back on track. We whiffed completely on the Ole Miss prediction. That was terrible last week. I deserve to be shamed into oblivion for that one. So shame on me for thinking that somebody would be healthy all week, right?
You're just like Billy Napier. You're just getting started. You know what?
That's right. That's right. Do you see that look in my eye this week?
I see it, Stephen. I see it. I also see that look in JR's eye.
Legend, cousin JR has done it again.
Thank you, JR. He has gifted a membership, Stephen, to Gary. Gary, welcome to
the family.
Yeah, thank you so much, JR. All right, so we got a lot of teams, like I said, on a bye. Before we get to this week's predictions and prize pick selections, where would you can hit on any of these teams, any order you want, Stephen? Who's the team that's at the tip of your tongue when it comes to teams that are on a bye this week?
Mike, I think the first team that's on my mind is Auburn. Just given the offensive showings the last couple weeks against Oklahoma and Texas A&M, I'm thinking about Georgia coming up and also Missouri. This is a tough stretch of games. I mean, the 3-0 start was great. The win over Baylor was huge. I think we saw some things early in the season that maybe if you were an Auburn fan, you get pretty optimistic. Last 2 weeks, not so much. So I think the bye week comes at a good time for kind of an offensive reset. And I always think about like self-scouting, like what are you doing well? What are you not doing well? I mean, Auburn's got to figure out offensive line, a little bit more balance. Maybe it's asking Jackson Arnold to run the ball. You look at that schedule, Mike, and 3-0 to 3-2, they could be 3-4 going into that game against Arkansas. So just thinking about bowl game program momentum, these next couple games are really going to be crucial for Hugh Freeze, given the schedule difficulty and also what we've seen offensively the last couple weeks.
Yeah, maybe they need to run the ball, Stephen.
Yeah.
I know they got some great receivers, and everybody was fired up about Jackson Arnold when we landed him out of the portal. But, man, we got to figure out something. And Hughes ran everyone out of the building that could be blamed for the offensive woes. So Now it's on his shoulders. If he's going to survive there, it's going to be because he fixes the offense. There's heck, the defense. If the offense was playing as well as the defense, Auburn's probably 5-0 this season.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like Auburn's defense gave up 24 to Oklahoma, and they gave up a lot of yards to Texas A&M and only 16 points. So the defense is doing its job. But you look at these offensive numbers, Mike, in terms of rushing the ball, less than 60 yards in SEC games this year. They're at the bottom of the SEC in sacks allowed. You and I have talked a lot about transfer portal and the trying to evaluate like how high they can actually lift a team. And it's really hard, I think, to rely on offensive linemen in multiple positions to come in and take your offensive line from being okay to great. And maybe it does take time for this Auburn offensive line, given the new faces. But I mean, I know Georgia's defense isn't necessarily getting the pressure that we're used to seeing, but I'm still thinking there's a lot of talent there. There's a lot of talent in Missouri. Later in the season, Alabama, like it's not going to get any easier for this group. So they've got to figure out how to get better balance. Maybe it's asking Jackson Arnold to, one, run the ball more, two, get rid of the ball quicker so that you're not just a sitting duck back there in the pocket and taking all these sacks.
Mm-hmm. And let me ask you this, Stephen. Let me put you on the spot here. I'm going to throw up their schedule again. Auburn. Now, I'm going to go with the kind of the extremes here, right? So not saying that you're predicting either one of these, but just what do you think is more likely? We're sitting here at 3-2 with – we got obviously the bye week, and then we got Georgia at home, Missouri at home, at Arkansas, Kentucky at home, at Vanderbilt, second bye, Mercer at home, then the Iron Bowl against Alabama at home. More likely, Stephen, that Auburn goes 9-3, which I think by all accounts at this point in time, well, really, I think even opening the season 9-3, I think Auburn fans would have taken that record. 9-3, or Hugh Freeze gets fired. So again, I'm going one extreme to the other. But I think 9-3 is probably best case at this point in time. I think firing Hugh Freeze is worst case. What is more likely for Auburn by November 30th?
Mike, I think it's firing Hugh Freeze, and I think it's really just the schedule. I'm looking at that schedule going, man, Mercer and Kentucky probably the only two slam dunk victories, right? I mean, Arkansas's got a lot of defensive issues, certainly, but maybe there's like an interim coach bump with Petrino taking over. Right now, you would say they're probably going to be underdogs to Georgia, Missouri, Vanderbilt, and Alabama. There's 4 more losses, and you're starting to like, can they even make a bowl game if they get picked off against Arkansas? So I think that based upon what we've seen, unless there is some massive offensive line and offensive fix coming, which teams get a lot better during the season, and every week's its own season, so it's possible. I just think 9-3 seems probably pretty unlikely here, don't you think?
I do, but what if? And again, this is a little bit of a leap, but let's say they beat Georgia. Could they go 9-3? Do you think? And again, 2 weeks to prepare. Georgia doesn't get that. They get them at home. I believe the SEC has already announced that's going to be a night game, so that favors Auburn. That's a special place in the evening. And we have seen Auburn do some tricky things there in Jordan-Hare. And, again, I just think that they got to get that running game going, particularly with Jackson Arnold. You can mock that guy all you want, but he is an elite runner. Heck, if he has a performance like he did against Bama last year, I think Auburn can beat Georgia. Is that a complete leap?
No, it's not. And in fact, I think it almost like it epitomizes like the Auburn program to some extent, because it does feel like when you look at that schedule, you go, man, they're going to be underdogs in all those games, but they're probably going to pick somebody off, right? We saw this last year with Texas A&M coming in to Auburn. Now, granted, it was the week before playing Texas, but I could see them picking off one of those games. And also, just the home splits here, like getting Georgia, getting Alabama at home, like it feels like they're probably going to get somebody. And especially they have not been blown out in those 2 SEC games. Like it's been close against Oklahoma. It's been close against Texas A&M. If they're just a little bit better on offense and they can fix some of these things, the defense is good enough to punch in these games and potentially get a victory. So One stat, and I don't have it in front of me, but it is fascinating to look at Jackson Arnold's like splits as far as like how fast he's getting rid of the ball compared to when he's holding it in the pocket. And you just wonder, it's like maybe if you could find some ways to get quicker passes, get the ball out, don't ask him to think too much, and you get a little bit going on the ground, all of a sudden, maybe you're protecting your offensive line more, and you're not asking him to stand back there and try to hit, 40-yard deep shots. Those couple things could really help this offense going forward. So there's some fixes there, but there's also enough doubt right now, I think, with Auburn to kind of question where this is going.
Right. It's on you, Hugh. All right. Who's another team that's on a bye this week, Stephen, that that you really want to discuss here?
I think LSU is top of mind for me, Mike, because they spent time in the top 5 just a few weeks ago before the loss to Ole Miss. Much like Auburn, I'm looking at their schedule going, South Carolina comes to Tiger Stadium. You get Texas A&M. You also play Alabama and Oklahoma on the road and Vanderbilt later this season. So there's some tricky games on this schedule. But I think we know their defense is better than last year. Just how good is it? I think there's room for debate given the offenses that they played and what happened on Saturday. But they've got to get this offense on track. And it's every position. Offensive line, it starts there. Garrett Nussmeier, the injury, he's got to get back to 100% or close to it. They've got to be able to get some balance. Aaron Anderson's banged up. So I'm thinking about LSU and seeing this offense has not performed up to expectations. They're averaging about 27 points a game. A lot of that is skewed by the game against Southeastern Louisiana. This offense needs to get back on track. They've got to get healthy, and they've got to get Nussmeier going, and they've got to find some balance to be able to get back in this playoff discussion.
Mm-hmm. And shout out Pete Dankos on 3. I don't know if you saw this, Stephen, but he a little bit of a report this morning. Sources tell on 3 that Garrett Nussmeier continues to work through the abdomen strain and that the bye week will be key for rest. So fingers crossed that, that'll be paramount for Garrett Nussmeier and that'll help him because they certainly need him right now. If they don't have him at full strength and they don't have his running game clicking, they don't really have the running game going at all. They don't have much of a shot here in the Southeastern Conference in a lot of these games, I think.
Well, 100%, Mike. I mean, so much of this offense, because of the offensive line concerns and the inability to run the ball. Now, maybe getting Caden Durham back healthy helps this too. But if you can't run the ball, a lot of it's on the quarterback. And you can just look at like the basic metrics on Nussmeier's season so far. He's averaging about 231 passing yards per game. That's down from 311 last year. Also, his yards per attempt has gone down by about a full yard. And so, and you can just watch him and you can see he just doesn't look 100%. And so I think having a healthy Nussmeier can really just change the whole dynamic here. And we talked about it on the Monday show. There's to me, one of the biggest indictments of that Ole Miss game was if they're getting pressure with 3, number one, that's not a good sign for LSU's offensive line, but they don't respect the running game. So they've got to be able to fix both those things. Maybe if you have a healthy Nussmeier, maybe it opens up the running game a little bit more. So there's a path here for LSU if the injury report looks a lot better next week.
Right. And this is typical SEC, right? Where you lose one game, you were on the road. They weren't even favored. Most people, like Steven, was picking them to win the game. Yes, it was a coin toss. I said all week it was a coin toss. It's not like I knew they were going to lose. But, you lost a coin flip on the road. And has this staff, while they may have their flaws, they have proven every year that they can lose in the opener and bounce back or lose, to Ole Miss and bounce back. You know what I mean? So this is it. We shouldn't act like it's doom and gloom and they're never going to accomplish anything and Brian Kelly needs to be run out of town. You know what I mean? Like, I think we're far, far, far away from that. And I'm not saying they're going to win out, but, if they finish 10-2, I'm really not going to be that surprised because they got a dominant defense. If they get the quarterback healthy and they can fix the offensive line, they got talent. Hell, Brian Kelly says this is one. I've seen some offensive lines. This is one of the best. You know what I mean? Like, if he was probably bullshitting, but if he truly believes that and if it's accurate, they're going to be just fine.
Yeah, and I think we're only 5 games into the season, and there's a long way to go. And if we could be talking in a couple weeks, like, okay, if Nussmeier is healthy, the offensive line has a little bit of time to gel. Yes, the schedule with games against Texas A&M, Alabama, Oklahoma is tough, but it's also doable. And I think to your point, it's always like we have the one loss and it changes our kind of perspective on a team. But I also think it's worth kind of taking just a step back and just saying, like, yeah, their defense is still really good. And Nussmeier, when he's healthy, is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So if you can go with those two things and kind of improve a little bit on the margins, we're talking about a team that's not out of this by any means. There's still a long way to go this season. It would not stun me if they play their way back into it.
All right, so who's another team, Stephen, on a bye that you want to discuss?
I'm going to kind of pair two up because they're linked together next week, and that's Arkansas and Tennessee.
Ooh.
And I thought it was fascinating to kind of hear, Josh Heupel earlier today in the teleconference, kind of talking through Arkansas and some of the unknowns that's coming up with Bobby Petrino taking over as interim coach. And so there's an element of like, you don't know what to expect out of Arkansas to some extent. They're going to have a good offense under Petrino and Taylor Green as well. But is there a spark? Do they do some things defensively different? Chris Wilson taking over play calling duties. There's just a ton of unknown there for Arkansas. And I'm thinking about Tennessee in this sense that Tennessee's had a lot of injuries on defense. It starts in the offseason with Jermon McCoy. Ricky Gibson's been banged up. They've had some guys on the defensive line banged up too. And I'm thinking about this matchup going, Petrino, Taylor Green, banged up defense. Mississippi State ran the ball well. What kind of fixes does the health report look better for Tennessee? And also, Tennessee coaching staff digging through these tapes, trying to figure out what they're going to do different on defense next week. So I'm just kind of thinking about the unknown element here for Arkansas. Like, how much better do they get on defense, if at all, over the bye week? And then also Tennessee preparing for it while also preparing for potentially a shorthanded defense against a great offense.
Right. And I want you to predict this game a week early. That's not exactly what I'm asking, Steve. But what is, you only get two options here. Arkansas pulls off, I don't know if you'd call it I think it's fair to say a stunning upset in Neyland, where Tennessee blows them out. You only get to pick one or the other. And again, not saying you're predicting either, but in this scenario that I'm presenting you, which one is more accurate given what you know today, October 1st?
I would think an upset is probably more likely than a blowout, only because.
Oh, sorry, Steven's cousin Shane just texted me. He says you're not welcome on the show anymore.
I'd say like Ole Miss was trying to kick me off the show. Tennessee now. I would pick Tennessee straight up. Like, if you ask me, the only reason that I would go with an upset, Mike, is because Arkansas was blown out against Notre Dame, but I do subscribe to the theory that sometimes there is a interim coach bump. Mm-hmm. And you add that in the element of, just a couple weeks ago, Arkansas almost beat Ole Miss. So, why not? Like, aren't they, outside of that one game where they were blown out against Notre Dame, they've been in every contest. And with their ability to score the ball, they've got a chance on the road, even if I still think they're the underdog here.
Right. And you never know. Taylor Green gets hot.
Right.
Maybe they're not as pathetic on defense. I don't think a coaching change fixes that. I think it's the players. But Joey Aguilar has thrown a lot of interceptions his entire career. He's doing it here at Tennessee as well. Again, that's the recipe, I think, for an upset. But I'm there with you. I'm just disappointed in you, Steven. Just disappointed.
I know you were disappointed in me last week with my predictions. So it's Mike's trying to get me motivated like Mark Stoops to turn this thing around this week. So we are motivated. Got that look in my eye. We're going to be more accurate with our predictions this week. Just like I bet that Taylor Green and Joey Aguilar will be accurate in 2 weeks or next Saturday for a fun quarterback battle there.
Right. And again, let us not forget, Stephen, Arkansas has beaten Tennessee 4 times in a row. So you might be onto something.
Mike, I think any time when you have a quarterback like Taylor Green, that can fix a lot of things. When you're talking like upset going on the road, a quarterback that's that dynamic can change the game. It'd be a little different, I think, if Arkansas had just kind of a offense. I think there's a chance they could put up some points here if Tennessee's defense is still banged up.
Yeah. All right. So next, Stephen, what's a bye week team that you're thinking a lot about?
I'm thinking a lot about Missouri because I am super fired up for that game against Alabama on October 11th. That is going to be a fantastic showdown next Saturday. And the reason why I'm thinking about that is Ty Simpson and these Alabama receivers have really been finding their groove the last 3 weeks. I mean, it seems like Ty Simpson can't miss the last couple weeks. And Missouri secondary, we saw this against South Carolina. They gave up some big plays. They've allowed 3 plays of 40 plus yards this season so far. So I'm curious, just thinking ahead a little bit, was it a one-off for Missouri secondary? Haven't played a ton of great quarterbacks this year. Here comes Ty Simpson, Williams, Horton, Bernard. I think if there's any kind of communication, any kind of issues in the back end, Missouri's got to get it cleaned up this week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're 100% right, Stephen. So that's going to be – I'm trying to think. Is there a bigger game for Missouri? Let's limit it to regular season in their time in the SEC, because I know they've made a couple SEC championships, so obviously those games were big. Could this potentially be the biggest game, though, in regular season in Missouri's SEC history?
Seems it has to be near the top, doesn't it?
I would think so.
I mean, you're top 15-ish. If Alabama wins this week, they're going to be in the top 10. And then that sets up a kind of like a game where Missouri could win and then be a top 10 team after week 7.
Right.
And certainly, thinking about the SEC East titles that they won, I think it's a little different now with the playoff structure and also the 16 teams wide open SEC title race we're looking at.
Hey, shout out Stephen. He agrees this is a big game, but I guarantee you he likes Bama. Too Slick, shout out Too Slick, gifted 5 memberships, Stephen, to the channel. Shout out Too Slick. Perry, Mason, Nick Anderson, Hand, Shoes, and Horse Grenades. That's a candidate for best name on the show. Stu and Christopher Johnson, you've all been gifted. Welcome to
the family.
Yeah, thank you, Too Slick. He's fired up. He's fired up, Stephen, that Bama's back. He's saying 10-2 for the Tide. Been saying it since that's 100% true. He came on here and said, hey, we're still going 10-2. And, he might actually be wrong, Stephen, because they might go 11-1. I mean, the way they're playing right now, they might very well do it.
Absolutely. I don't love road games against Missouri, South Carolina, and Auburn. Those are pretty tricky. But I like the fact they get Vanderbilt, Tennessee, LSU, and Oklahoma at home. Also, Mike, like I said, Ty Simpson doesn't seem like he can miss. And it also seems like there's just a different feeling about this Alabama team since that Florida State loss. Like, as bad as that was, they've been playing a lot better. You can go on the road and beat Georgia. You can beat anybody on that schedule the rest of the way.
All right, so who else is on your mind here on the bye week, Stephen?
How about South Carolina? Because there's a really difficult schedule coming up for this team. Now, the full caveat, as we always talk about, Shane Beamer tends to figure this out as the season goes along. But I do worry about the rest of the team outside of Lenora Sellers. And getting Sellers on track is important, but also just thinking ahead a little bit, offensive line, rushing attack, those two groups are going to have to get a lot better. You can lean on Lenora Sellers to win some of these games, but realistically, I think if you want to get back in playoff discussion, and that's going to require winning almost all of your games, it's going to require a complete team effort, and that's the rushing attack, offensive line. So I'm thinking supporting cast here, because you go on the road to play LSU, then you get Oklahoma, Alabama, Ole Miss, Texas A&M. Just a brutal stretch of top 25 teams. And as good as Lenora Sellers is, I don't think you can ask him to win all of those games. So the help around Sellers is what I'm thinking about on the bye week.
Right, but I think the whole narrative can be changed with a win, which they got obviously with Kentucky. And so just going into the bye week, I think it would have been devastating had they lost that Kentucky game and thinking about this skid they were on. So it's just, I think it's easier to get college players motivated and working hard after I know most people will mock that win, but I think any conference win is a big time win kind of steer the ship in the right direction and maybe re-energize you going into a bye week. So who knows? A lot of these issues could be corrected, and they got some of them corrected against Kentucky.
Absolutely. I mean, I subscribe to the theory that there is never a bad win in conference play. It is hard to win these games in the SEC. The talent, these teams have played each other. They know each other so well. There's nothing, Kentucky's the worst team in the SEC, but to be able to win 35-13, you'll take it, and you'll take it and build on it. And also, I think you said something that's important. And I don't want to sound like I'm like an old person yelling at the cloud, but I do think, especially in the college football era where it is like a little bit more transactional, like I think it is important to keep winning. Like you keep people motivated, you keep people engaged. Using Clemson here, they may have been a little bit checked out against Syracuse. They kind of had those 2 early losses, kind of where at Florida State last year we saw this. So I do think motivation and winning can help kind of spiral into more good things, especially in this portal era where you're trying to keep everybody engaged.
Right. Hey, shout out Razorbacks. This is a good one for you, Stephen. Good afternoon, Mike and Skinny Shane. Shout out. And shout out Justin Ingram. He became a member to the channel. Justin, welcome to
the family.
Yeah. And then we had, man, what a bunch of generous cousins this afternoon, Stephen. Nick Anderson, the Nick Anderson, who used to play for the Orlando Magic. I don't know. He just gifted 5 memberships, Stephen, to the channel. Thank you, Nick. Nick gifted Missouri Mark, Shadowless Pokemon Dimes. I think I'm too old for that one. Diesel 80, Ondor Wolf, and Sub the Gator. You've all been gifted memberships. Thanks to Nick Anderson. Welcome to
the family.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. We appreciate you, buddy. Thank you so much.
I am so glad that my nerd sports brain went to like Nick Anderson, the basketball player with the Magic, and you went there too. So that makes me feel better.
All right. Any other teams on a bye this week?
Oh, Mike, we got to talk about the team that Steven was a complete idiot about last week. And that is Ole Miss, because they're 5-0. They are the top ranked team in most rankings from the SEC after last week. And Mike, here's what I'm thinking about. They get a full week to celebrate that win over LSU, and they get Washington State. So they got 2 weeks to get it out of their system before Georgia and Oklahoma and South Carolina come up. It's like the perfect bye week to get some guys healthy. It's the perfect week to celebrate it. But then you got to get ready for Georgia on October 18th. So the timing of this bye week could not be better for Ole Miss.
Yeah, and I've been giving them a lot of hell. So I'm going to try to lay you up. Now, just be completely honest, Stephen. But I think I already know the answer. That's why I'm saying I'm laying you up here. What's more likely for Ole Miss? They with the remaining schedule: Washington State at home, at Georgia, at Oklahoma, South Carolina at home, Citadel at home, Florida at home, and then a second bye week before the Egg Bowl on the road. More likely, 9-3 or 12-0. What more likely for Ole Miss?
Ooh. Man, that's a good question. I might go 9-3.
Oh, I was hoping you'd say 12-0.
Yeah,
I don't think either one is likely. I'll just say that. But I'm just saying more likely, I would lean 12-0.
Interesting. I subscribe to the theory that everybody's going to lose at least once. Mm-hmm. And I think especially next year, 9 games in the SEC, I think everybody's probably going to lose twice just because it's going to get a lot harder to go through the season. The only thing, I'm looking at those road games and looking at like Oklahoma, Georgia, especially back-to-back. I would guess Mateer's probably back by October 25th, unless you believe the Chipotle rumors. The November 28th showdown against Mississippi State looks a lot tougher now. You don't think Jeff Lebby would like to get some revenge? So I think this team, and we said on the Monday show, I think they're in great shape to make the SEC championship game. But I think I'm going to always play the odds for more losses because I just think it's harder to go undefeated.
Okay. Steven's a glass half empty guy. Got it.
See, people saying that I'm hating on Ole Miss. Like, I had them ranked as the top ranked team. They're the first team in the playoff. I said this offseason that it might be the year after the year. What?
Can't win, Steven. You can't win.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you where you can win, and that is over at PrizePicks, right? So we hit all the teams on a bye week, right? I don't want to overlook anyone.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Okay. So shout out PrizePicks, one of the sponsors. They've been with us for, I believe, 5 seasons now. Really fine product. Go check them out. Maybe you don't want to wager on the games. Maybe you want to wager on daily fantasy sports. Then go check them out over at prizepicks.com. Promo code SEC. You play 5, you get 50. So, man, you can't beat that deal. And all it is they have player projections for passing yards, touchdowns, receiving yards, rushing yards, things of that nature, and you just select more than or less than, and you can win big over at PrizePicks. So, who's your PrizePicks selections for this week, Stephen?
Mike, let's start with Georgia and Kentucky, and I'm going to take a couple dogs on the rushing side of this. I'm going to go Gunnar Stockton. He's at 25.5. I'm going to go more than on the rushing yards. Also, Chauncey Bowens, great performance last week. Always hard to figure out how the dogs are going to split up the rushing yards, but he's at 60.5. I am going to play the more than side of that. I think you kind of ride the hot hand. Interested just in general to see how this Georgia offense looks. So I'm going to take those two from Georgia and Kentucky. Got a few more plays, Mike, but how do you like those?
Here's the thing, Stephen. I'm very concerned about how close these games typically are between Georgia and Kentucky. So, yeah, I mean, I don't hate those selections, but I'm just a little worried that it's going to be a little bit closer for whatever reason, whether it's Mark Stoops has got something on Kirby or they kind of are very similar in a lot of ways. It's just like one's got top 2 talent and one's got top 40 talent. You know what I mean? It's just it's one's got the elite players and the other doesn't, but they know what they want to do and they get after it. So I may stay away from these ones. So, but I've been on a cold streak on the PrizePicks, so it's probably smart to go away from what I suggest.
I think a close game could actually benefit the rushing yards. If it's a one-sided game, you don't want to rush Gunnar Stockton. But
Right.
I think in general, I think Georgia's got to get going this week, and I think there should be some reason to have kind of maybe an easy win. But Bowens and Stockton both, I think the attempts will be there. I think the question is like Nate Frazier or Josh McCray. You got a lot of mouths to feed on the ground game there.
Mm-hmm. All right, you got any other PrizePicks selections for us?
Mike, you know where I'm going. We're going to the swamp.
Oh, no. With these passing numbers?
That's why we're going with the rushing attacks.
Okay.
We're going Arch Manning, 24.5 in rushing yards. Mike, we're going over. What's interesting is Ohio State and UTEP, the 2 games that were the closest for Texas this year, he went more than on the rushing yards. I think they do it here too. I'm also going to take Arch Manning to get 1 rushing touchdown. He's at 0.5. Take the more than side. I think he gets a rushing touchdown on Saturday. I know you love those plays, Mike, right?
Yeah, I mean, all this hype with Arch Manning, I didn't know we were getting glorified, Tim Tebow, but here we are. I mean, he's a rushing machine. We'll see if he can throw the football, but yeah, I think this will be a low-scoring game, but yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. If I'm going to take one of the quarterbacks in this game, it's definitely going to be Arch.
I agree. I don't think we're going to have too many points in this game. But I think you could also see Arch Manning. I would also say take Arch Manning in the passing touchdowns. Like he's at 0.5 there too. I would just take him to get 1 on Saturday.
Is it true? Cousin Tony's asking. Arch Stephen's middle name is Arch.
I was actually thinking about changing my middle name to that. So yeah.
All right, you got any other PrizePicks selections for us?
Just a couple more. I'll throw them out here rapid fire, Mike. I like the play the touchdown angle in the PrizePicks plays. So Marcel Reed is at 1.5 in passing touchdowns. I'll take the more than side of that. I think they throw a couple against Mississippi State. Also, Ty Simpson, he's also at 1.5. He's basically been about 2 or more every game this season in passing touchdowns. So give me the more than side. And also Diego Pavia is 0.5 passing touchdowns. I'll take one on Saturday.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I like all those. Big game Pavia, Ty Simpson. If Utah State has a little bit of success against Vanderbilt, I know they got helped, I think, a little bit with the referees, but the way Ty Simpson's, he's just in the zone right now. It's kind of hard to bet against him. You know what?
Yeah, if you can go on the road and play that well against Georgia, at home against a Vanderbilt defense that's probably not as good as Georgia, I think you feel pretty good about Ty Simpson in real life and also in fantasy this week.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, Steven. So are you ready to make your predictions for the upcoming weekend in the SEC?
Let's do it. I'm going to try and go 5-0 this week, Mike. I'm feeling motivated.
Well, I guarantee you'll go 1-0 in this one. How about Oklahoma, Stephen, facing off against Kent State in Norman? 4 o'clock Eastern, 3 Central on the SEC Network. Oklahoma, huge favorite here. Favored by 45.5 points. Over-unders 53.5. What do you see from the Sooners? How bad are they going to beat this squad?
When you asked me if there was any more teams on bye week, I almost said Oklahoma because pretty much here, not to be mean to Kent State, but they are one of the 5 worst teams in college football. They have lost 62-14 to Texas Tech and 66-10 to Florida State. You get where I'm going with this one. This is going to be an easy win for Oklahoma. As always, it's kind of like a game to get up big on the scoreboard, get some guys some reps, stay healthy, and use this week to prepare for Texas next week in Red River. So, Mike, I think Oklahoma rolls big. I like to see Michael Hawkins. That's what I'm watching for, to see his improvement from last year to this year. I am 100% on board with the idea of Ben Arbuckle, better receivers, and something better on the offensive line. Michael Hawkins will be better, and it'll happen this week because Kent State's pretty bad. So, Mike, give me Oklahoma. Get ready to fire up Boomer Sooner quite a bit on Saturday. They're going to cruise to a 62-7 victory against Kent State.
Wow. Even without John Mateer, huh?
Going to air it out. Going to get Michael Hawkins ready just in case John Mateer isn't ready to go against Texas.
Yeah, and I think that'll be massively important to now. I think we'll probably overreact one way or another, right? I mean, either he's going to look like $1 million and they're going to say, wow, they can beat Texas. They don't, John who? Or he looks a little shaky and it'll be like, good night. Maybe that's the play. If I'm Oklahoma, like, it would be like 4D chest, but you could probably beat this team with like 3 Michael Hawkins interceptions.
Yeah.
And I'm saying not like he's awful, like they're so good that they design interceptions to fool Texas into thinking he can't play. I'm just playing the 4D chess over here. I'd love to see that, but I have seen an early line. I don't know how much you can actually wager on it, Stephen, but have you seen this, the early line for Texas, Oklahoma?
I thought at one point it was down to 3, but that was before the Mateer injury. Is that right? And it's gone up now?
Well, what I saw this week was Texas by 3.5.
Oh, okay.
So I would assume that would take into account the Mateer injury, because honestly, I think if John Mateer never got hurt and he was 100%, to our knowledge, 100%, I think Oklahoma's favored in that game right now. Not by a lot, but maybe by like 1.5 or something.
Yeah, I thought after the Auburn game, my kind of thought was it was leaning towards toss-up territory, where it was like 1 or 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I think how Texas played at Florida was probably going to dictate where the money came in on.
Right.
Yeah, and you brought up something interesting. If you are Oklahoma, I would assume Venables and Arbuckle know way more than the dudes and people working at Chipotle do about Mateer and actually how realistic it is for him to come back.
Right.
And so I think you want to get Hawkins a lot of reps. You want to get him some experience, but would there be some things you do hold back on because you want to show Texas some new stuff and don't have the full arsenal on display here? Like, you could probably run some basic stuff and run up the score a lot, but say, look, there's these 3 packages we're not going to show because we want Texas to be surprised about it next week.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. The mind games shall continue there for the Red River shootout. All right. How about this one, Stephen? Thankfully, all the rest of these conference matchups on the weekend. Let's go with Kentucky at Georgia, Stephen. The early game, noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central, nationally televised on ABC. Georgia favored by 20.5 points. The over-under's 48.5 total points. Who do you like in this one?
Mike, do you remember what you were doing on November 4th, 2023?
November 4th, 2023. No, I have no idea.
Well, that's the last time that Kentucky scored more than 20 points on the road in an SEC game. So I bring that up to say, when I'm thinking about this matchup, I think Kentucky has played Georgia tough, usually in Lexington. It's been a little bit more lopsided in Athens. And I'm struggling to find matchups that favor Kentucky here. I think their best chance is to keep it lower scoring. Seth McGowan having a great start to the season. And even though Georgia's defense has been questionable, they're giving up less than 3 yards per carry. So Georgia can do, maybe they're not getting pressure. The secondary's having issues. The matchup, though, still favors Georgia very heavily. I'm thinking about Georgia, though, and I'm looking at the schedule coming up and seeing that game against Auburn. And I'm also thinking, are we going to get an angry Georgia team? We saw Ohio State lose last year in the regular season, and then they got better. I think Georgia's right in that category, too. I think they could easily win quite a few of their remaining games, and they go into the playoff as one of those teams that nobody wants to play. But I do think you want to see some dominance here, because if this game's close, there's really no reason for it to be, given the way Kentucky's played this year in the matchups. I don't think you go into Auburn with a good feeling. So I think Kirby and Georgia want to make a statement here, and I think they get back on track. I think Stockton has a good game. Defense handles Kentucky's offense. Give me Georgia 34, Kentucky 10.
Not very close.
No. Would you agree with me, though? I think it's hard to find a path to an upset, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the numbers here, and it's like, well, Georgia struggles to defend the pass. And then you're like, well, Kentucky's got an inexperienced quarterback and no receivers. Okay. Well, Kentucky can run the football. Well, Georgia defends a run better than anybody but 10 teams in the country, you know? So, yeah, I mean, it's not going to be pretty probably. But again, this is oftentimes, I mean, a ball game. I don't know why. We got to run the football. We got to limit mistakes. And then, you know, it's easy to sit here and say, well, if I didn't turn the ball over 4 times in the second quarter against Carolina, maybe they win that game. Because I can promise you, any team that turns it over 4 times in a ball game, if we don't do that, it's probably a different outcome. But you know, Georgia's going to do what it does to force those turnovers in this matchup. But mistake free, you got to force mistakes. It's a tall task, obviously. So maybe Georgia. Maybe there's a little bit, you know, it's an old cliche, but I think it's true at times. Don't let one loss turn into 2. If I'm Kentucky, you know, maybe that's an outcome to getting this to be a competitive ball game as well.
Yeah, you could maybe catch Georgia being a little bit down. Maybe they're thinking ahead to Auburn. They're overlooking Kentucky and saying they haven't been that good this year. They're listening to idiots like me say, "Oh, there's no chance for the upset." So I think if you're Kentucky, there's nothing to lose here. Like, you're a big underdog. Also, I could also just see this game being kind of ugly too. Like, Georgia just runs the ball. Stockton hits a few plays in the air. It's like 27-3 in the fourth quarter. It's not necessarily pretty, but it's dominant for Georgia. I actually thought when you mentioned turnovers, I thought you were going to go with what Hugh Freeze was saying. Well, if we're 2-3, we could easily be 5-0. It's like, so, never a dull moment with Hugh Freeze at the microphone.
No, but hey, Kirby, you know, he's got a vendetta against a lot of people, it seems like. like Tennessee, like Florida. He does not have that vendetta for Kentucky. in a weird way, he's got a soft spot for old Stoops. I think that's his closest friend in the SEC in the coaching circle. So I don't think he's going to want to throttle him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I could see that. I think that kind of gets at the idea of maybe it being like 27-7, something where Georgia's never really threatened, but necessarily it's not like 30, 40 points on the scoreboard.
Right.
Maybe.
And again, this is honestly a pathetic place to live, but our buddy Nick Roush, shout out, and I'm not talking about the place of Kentucky. I'm saying the state of being a Kentucky fan, where the apathy has set in, where you're playing a team like Georgia, and I literally said it, and maybe it was foolish, but I think there's some truth to it, to where the hope is maybe the opposing coach doesn't want to kick your ass too bad.
Yeah,
but that's the state of this program right now.
It's, I guess maybe with the biggest optimism, if you're Kentucky, could be like maybe Boley ends up being like the guy.
Mm-hmm.
He shows well again. I mean, Georgia, Texas, Tennessee had Auburn coming up for this team. I mean, that's a pretty brutal stretch, not to mention still have to play Florida, Vanderbilt, and Louisville. I think given that schedule, I think maybe you have to hope for like individuals to shine, because like you said, I mean, there's nothing to say this matchup will be close, and you're kind of just wishing, well, maybe Georgia wants to take it easy on Mark Stoops. That's not a good place to be if you're Kentucky.
No. And hey, shout out. I just saw it too in the comments. Someone said, shout out P5. Plus, Georgia may want to sit some guys. So yeah, take that into consideration. That's about as bad as Kirby will take it easy on you, but we want to get to backups sometime. You know where they don't have to worry about that, Stephen? That's in old Tuscaloosa.
Always showing up for them boys in Tuscaloosa. It's Stephen Up. Roll Tide.
Thank you, Stephen Up. He gifted a membership to Spencer A. Xbot. Spencer, welcome to
the family.
Courtesy of old Stephen Up. Okay, next game, Stephen. Let's go with... I know you're dying to talk about this one. How about mighty Texas, Stephen? Finally getting into the conference. They're joining the rest of us. Thank good Lord here. Playing in Gainesville, of course, 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 Central on ESPN. Texas, a slight favorite, 6.5 points. Over-unders 41.5 total points. Stephen, who do you like in this matchup of two of the most hyped quarterbacks the SEC's ever seen?
That's exactly where I wanted to go, Mike, because we talked about it on the Monday show. It is the quarterback disappointment bowl. We had the Sunglasses Bowl, recently in the SEC. Now it's all about quarterback disappointments here. But I think that's kind of where we had to start. And when I look at these two teams, defense, I think both teams pretty solid on defense. Florida's got some guys banged up, but I think, from just on the outset, big picture, probably not a ton of points scored here. The over-under has been hovering between 41 and 43. So I think we start studying this matchup of where is the big edges in this game. And number one, I think we go to Texas and see, was Sam Houston the start of the Texas offense finding itself as we get into SEC play? Arch Manning looked great in that game, but that was Sam Houston. Florida's defense in the swamp, totally different scenario, way more difficult. So I'm wondering, and this is what I'm watching for, is did Arch turn the corner, and can he do it on Saturday? Because if he plays well, I think we're talking on next week about this Texas team is starting to gain momentum. They get Red River. They could really be finding out who they are coming into SEC play. So Arch Manning's performance is critical against a good defense. For Florida, this gets at the other side of it is it the beginning of the end for Billy Napier? I think if they get blown out on Saturday, could be some tough conversations coming for Florida coming up real soon. But also DJ Lagway. He's had a chance to reset. They've had a bye week. They've had a chance to get healthy. Dallas Wilson maybe looks like he's going to play for Florida. So some extra weapons out there. Mike, I think it's really just as simple as this. I think both defenses are solid. You give a check to Texas. And especially if Texas can kind of get Colin Simmons going. We know Florida's been giving up some tackles for loss. Can you get some more pressure, make life even more difficult for Florida? Florida has scored 3 offensive touchdowns in its last games. It's going to be hard to generate some points here. If they have an offensive breakout, I would be very surprised. I trust Sarkisian to be able to generate enough points in this game. And I don't think Arch Manning's going to have a huge day, but I think he'll be fine. Not enough to maybe quiet all the doubters or add to the hype machine. So, Mike, I like Texas defense to lead the way here. 27-13. Longhorns beat the Gators in the Swamp.
If it plays out that way, is Billy the coach for A&M?
Man, I don't know how you could bring him back for another home game. It feels like it's getting pretty. If you lose by a couple touchdowns, it's starting to become. I don't know. Toxic's probably a bad word, but you'd be 1-4. Maybe after A&M, you lose, you go 1-5. You come home from Mississippi State. I know there's the bye week after. That's usually the best time to fire a coach.
Yeah.
I go back to, I know what we said, Monday too. I think it's really important. Anytime a coach's on the hot seat, it's almost like, did it bottom out? That's been the one thread for Arkansas, Oklahoma State, UCLA, and Virginia Tech. If it's close, I think he lives to fight another day. If they win, for sure. If it's a blowout, I think it's a totally different conversation come Sunday.
So it might be as simple, and it's crazy that it may come down to something like this, but Gators have to start this game fast.
Yeah.
Because if they get in a hole early, this is not a program currently capable of digging out of a 10-point hole, not even a 7-point hole. You know what I mean? If they could get up somehow by like 2 scores, let's say 10 points, I think that may be the only recipe for them winning this game.
100%. Because, you think about like the crowd too. Like what if Texas gets up 14-0, 10-0? The crowd's out of it. Maybe Lagway struggles. The boos the doubts start to creep in. It would not stun me at all if, both coaches are pretty cautious offensively. Iowa Northwestern style punting here, like a punt might actually be a good drive because the way that in Ohio State's defense is great, but I still think it's fair to wonder, Texas offensively, it's one thing to do it against Sam Houston. It's another in the SEC. If you're Sarkisian, maybe you kind of just feel your way through the first quarter. And I know they've got some guys banged up at running back and receiver too. So I would expect if this game is close, like a big play or two could really swing it. But to your point, I think Florida's got to get off to a fast start. Don't create doubt, keep the fans in it, and keep that home atmosphere juiced up for the fourth quarter.
And I know last year, it's not always a good thing to just like look at last year and equate it to this year, different players, but same coaches on each side in terms of Florida's defensive staff and Texas offensive staff. And if you recall, Texas went up and down the field. It was like a joke how easy it was. Does that play into this game at all? Because I think Florida is obviously much better on defense, but this was like the last game where they got torched. And I know DJ Lagway didn't play, but that's got nothing to do with what I'm talking about here. This was the defense. Like they had no answers for what Sark was throwing at them.
I think that kind of gets at my feeling for this game, Mike, which is if I trust one coach to manufacture like 17, 20 points, it's definitely Sarkisian. And I think that gets at kind of like the game planning thing. Like they've had now a couple of weeks to really figure out, like they attacked Florida last year. They can do it again this year. Yes, their defense is probably better. I think Texas is better on defense, and it's hard for me to see like Napier scheming up 20 points based upon what we've seen so far this year.
Right. Hey, shout out cousin Rick Steven, the most loyal A&M fan out there.
It's Texas A&M's biggest fan, cousin Rick. Gig 'em, Aggies.
Thank you, Rick. NIL equals free agency, no salary caps, and no draft order for even great players. Teams with the most money and fastest offer will win the day. Complete chaos. Beat the hell out of Mississippi State. I don't necessarily disagree, Rick, but I also think that's how you got Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's good and bad from it, you know?
Absolutely. I guess if I would choose to be an optimist on this front, because I agree with you, Rick. I mean, I've covered college football for way too long now, but I do worry about like the chaos in the sport. And like, anytime I brought up the, sort of like the chaos factor, the normal reaction from other people is, why do you not want players to get paid? It's not that. It's like the sport, you think about the NFL and think about the structure the NFL has. Like they have a clear free agency, they have a clear this and that. And that's really where, and Mike, I think you kind of fall in the same thing. We just want some structure in the sport. So that way we know the rules. There's no transfer waivers. There's none of this chaos. Like it's very clear going forward. And I think from an optimist angle, the fact that the portal window is just one time, there's maybe some legislation that may help out some of these things. I'm going to choose to be optimistic that maybe it won't be as chaotic going forward, but this is really hard to predict where it goes.
And we're already moving to one portal window, which is good. And I heard that it's, I don't know that they finalized it, but I think it's going to be 14 days. And this is so funny, Stephen. I was told that's because they wanted it 10, but the players said, no, that's not enough. So they kind of gave them more. And the reason being is more days equals more negotiations and offers that can be collected. Just essentially more time to make more money. But, it is what it is. But that's the reality based on what I was told. So that's interesting.
It is. And, to Rick's point on the NIL, I mean, SEC teams should have a pretty clear advantage here. I mean, the Big Ten has done a good job, and you can see this like with Ohio State. You can see this with Oregon, Penn State, Michigan. They've, Indiana too. I mean, a lot of these teams have invested in NIL, and I think, like Arkansas and some of these other teams, like if you want to catch up to the pack in the SEC, you got to invest, and I think we've seen that. And so, I don't want college football to be like the NFL. I think it's better to be a completely different sport, but I do think the way that they have a clearly defined free agency and rule structure would really benefit college football. So that way we're not guessing like, hey, when's the portal open? This guy's getting a waiver. Like what? Like he's suing for a year. Like I hope that makes sense. Like I think we need some basic ground rules in the sport more than anything.
Right. Well, where they're lacking, and again, we could go on all day about this, but where they're lacking is leadership.
Yeah.
So we have one hell of a leader in the SEC, but he doesn't govern the rest of the sport. And I seriously question the leaders in the other conferences. But that's a topic for a different day. For Cousin Rick, Stephen, let's go Mississippi State at Texas A&M. The night game, blackout, Kyle Field here, Stephen, 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central on the SEC Network. Texas A&M favored by 14.5 points. The over-under 55.5 points. Who do you like in the matchup?
Mike, I want to ask you a question about Texas A&M that's been on my mind the last couple weeks. Does this feel like a different Texas A&M program than what we're used to seeing?
Oh, buddy, does it ever? It's we're no longer got a joker or Jimbo at the wheel. We've got a qualified coach that knows what he's doing. And yeah, I mean, this feels night and day different.
The reason why I think about that is I think about the last 2 weeks, closing the door, or last two games, like closing the door against Notre Dame, closing the door against Auburn. It feels like those were games that Texas A&M might have lost, like especially under Jimbo Fisher. It feels like way different. Now, we may get into November and this may look like a stupid prediction, but I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking about this matchup, and then thinking about what Texas A&M has coming up. They have this game, and they have Florida, and then they have 4 of 6 games on the road. They should be 6-0 going into that game against Arkansas. I'm thinking about that because in the playoff race, with as tight as the SEC battle is, you have to win your essentially your easiest games on your schedule. Like at LSU, Missouri, Texas, those are tough. But you get Mississippi State and Florida, games you are favored in. You got to win those if you want to go to the playoff. So I'm thinking about that all in the backdrop and just thinking about what that could mean for this matchup. And number one, it's the Mario Craver Bowl. He probably out for, I don't know if revenge is a fair word, but I could easily see him having a good day here. I mean, Mississippi State gave up 335 yards to Tennessee and Joey Aguilar last week. So could be a good game for Marcel Reed, Concepcion, and Craver. On the Mississippi State side, Mike, they also feel like a different team. They are much improved since last season, way better than I think I envisioned this offseason. And this is kind of a measuring stick opportunity for Jeff Lebby. They nearly pulled off the upset last week. They are a double-digit underdog here. This is really their first true road test. So I'm fascinated to see how they hold up because they closed that gap this offseason. They nearly beat Tennessee. If they play well here, each time your expectations for this Mississippi State kind of change, Mississippi State team change. They have allowed 11 sacks though, and they're going up against a good Texas A&M front on the road. I think that's going to be a hard matchup. I'd also like to see Blake Shapen get going a little bit more than we saw against Tennessee. This game being at home, first SEC road test for Mississippi State this season, it's a tough matchup. I do like Mississippi State to cover, but Mike, give me the Aggies. 31-20. They keep winning.
Yeah, and going back to the question you asked me, Stephen, is this like a different A&M? In a lot of regards, yes, but kind of like we were joking about Hugh Freeze, we should be 5-0. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the margin for error, I feel like, and that's kind of the theme of this conference. It's so small. And A&M made a handful of plays last week. They made the play that mattered against Notre Dame. But they could easily be sitting here where Auburn is. And they're like, what are we doing? We're spinning our wheels. We got all this talent. We can't win these games. Now, they're not. And they're undefeated. And they deserve to be undefeated. I'm not saying they don't. But it's just, it really can often come down to literally one play. And I don't know that this one will come down to one play, but it'll come down to a handful of plays. And I think that's basically every game in this conference, potentially, every week. Is that fair?
I think it is. I think that's probably the thing that's most exciting about this conference race down the stretch is it feels like there are so many teams involved here. Like even like a team like Mississippi State, they're probably going to play a factor in this too, because like, what if they beat Ole Miss? I mean, they get Texas at home. They just gave Tennessee all it could handle. This conference has so much depth this year. And I think that's going to make the fine lines of the race, like winning those one score games. And that's why it's so critical, I think, for Texas A&M to just take care of business here. And, the favorites are what they are in Vegas and all that. But like on paper, based upon what we've seen, they should be favored. They are favored. They need to win this game, beat Florida, take care of Arkansas. And each time you move a little bit closer to the SEC championship game and playoffs. So the fact that A&M in close games has found a way to win, I think speaks well of where this team is going forward. So it would not surprise me. You look at the Big 12 last year, there were like 9 teams that went into the last week of the season with a chance to make the conference championship game. I don't know if we'll end up there in the SEC, Mike, but but one-score games are going to be very important in this conference. And the fact that A&M has found a way to win 2 that were on the edge is a credit that could mean a lot in the playoff or SEC race.
Right. All right, Stephen, final matchup here. College game day. What? Picked a Vanderbilt game. Of course they did, because Vanderbilt's elite this year, Stephen. Vanderbilt at Alabama. There's only one undefeated team in this matchup, and it's the Commodores. Number 16 versus number 10. 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 Central on the ABC, nationally televised. Crimson Tide favored by 10.5 points. The over-under is 56.5 total points. What do you like in this one?
Mike, I think it's worth, and we've done this exercise before, is just taking a second to appreciate what Clark Lee has done at Vanderbilt. The fact that they're 5-0, if they win this game, they're going to be in the top 10 next week. College game day, Vanderbilt's a playoff contender. I mean, think about where this program was just a couple years ago. And it speaks to almost what we talked about a few minutes ago of investing in giving the program the resources you need. And so I think it's a pretty big moment for Vanderbilt that maybe we probably should just appreciate how far they've come in the last couple years. I think the matchup, there's so many interesting storylines just because of what happened last year. The offseason trash talk kind of between the two teams. You know, everybody's fired up for this game. And it's like, it's what in the preseason, it was on your radar, but you thought probably Texas and Florida was going to be a bigger game this week. Instead, it's Vanderbilt and Alabama, which I think is just an awesome kind of note as we go into week 6. In the matchups, I think there's a couple things that stand out to me. And the first one is, number one, who wins the style? Because I think if you're Alabama, you want to come out and you want to jump on Vanderbilt right away. Do not let them drag you into the deep water and make this a close game. You know, if it is a game where Ty Simpson only has 3 possessions or 4 possessions in the first half, that's a Vanderbilt game. Vanderbilt can steal this one on the road. When you look at Vanderbilt's pass defense, they gave up some yards last week to Utah State, but they're still 83rd in the nation in passing success rate on defense. So I think that kind of goes to like style. If I'm Alabama, I want Ty Simpson, Ryan Williams scoring early. I want to get the underdog out of their rhythm, because on the Vanderbilt side of things, what gives you confidence has to be Georgia and Florida State both ran for over 200 yards against Alabama. Pavia, Ced Alexander, you know, Florida State's offense is kind of tricky with all the motions and shifts that Malzahn throws out there. Here's Tim Beck and Pavia ready to cook something up on Saturday. So I think both ways can kind of find a path here for a victory. All that being said, Mike, Vanderbilt's getting no respect. They are a 10 and plus point underdog on Saturday. No respect, right? Pavia, I'm sure that's going to be played up. I think Pavia is going to have a good game. I think Alabama is going to come out on top, though. So Pavia plays well. Vanderbilt plays well. Alabama at home, though, and Ty Simpson continues to be red hot. I like Alabama 34, Vanderbilt. Let's go 27.
Okay. So I think, needless to say, though, while you're probably fairly confident that Alabama wins it, would you be stunned if Vanderbilt wins it?
I don't think so. I mean, one other storyline I think we should talk about here is like consistency for Kalen DeBoer and Alabama. I mean, beat Georgia last year. They lost on the road. This one's at home. It's a little different. But this like consistency and being able to maintain success, if Alabama's truly moved on from the loss to Florida State and they are a different team, it shows up on Saturday. And a close game is not surprising to me. But I think given what we know, given that Alabama's had some trouble stopping the run this year, wouldn't stun me at all if Vanderbilt keeps this one close or wins.
And I know on paper it's a big game, college game day, obviously, but and maybe last year makes it a big game in the Alabama locker room. But I truly wonder if those players view this as a big matchup like they did, obviously, last week. Do you think that's fair to question, or do you think they respect Vanderbilt?
I think they better respect Vanderbilt after what happened last year, right?
To the degree you think they respect Georgia, though?
Probably not.
Yeah, I don't think so either. So again, does that mean anything? Not necessarily, but it's just something to consider. Let me ask you this: if Vanderbilt wins, and I know you just predicted they won't. If Vanderbilt wins this game, do you think Diego wins a Heisman?
I think there's a good chance he's a finalist at that point.
I mean, is that crazy? I say a lot of crazy
Yeah.
things on here, but like that's on a one out of 10 scale of the crazy things I've asked on this show.
The thing that gives me pause, I mean, first of all, MVP factor, performance factor, stat factor, like it's all there for Pavia. And that's why he better be in the top 5 or so if they win this game. I'm also just thinking about like consistency though, like with Alabama and Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's still got to play LSU, Missouri, Texas, Auburn, and at Tennessee. So, a win means a lot. There's a lot of people who won the September Heisman. I mean, I remember like when Geno Smith was at West Virginia and they played that 70-60 game against Baylor and everybody was ready to hand him the Heisman Trophy. Mike, there's still a long season to go here. So, yeah.
Man, we ain't in September anymore, Steven. It's October over here.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it is. Man, you're right. There's still a long way to go this season. So a win definitely helps Pavia's profile for sure.
Mm-hmm. And then the final question I got for you, Steven. So again, let's run through it real quick. You got Alabama winning, A&M winning, Texas winning, Georgia winning, and of course Oklahoma winning. If those are the results, what do you think are the big talking points, storylines, if you will, come Sunday morning in the Southeastern Conference? What is kind of like the big one or two things that you think people will be discussing online?
I think number one, it's Texas, because I think they may be forgotten a little bit. I know they had the loss to Ohio State, but if they go on the road and look good, we talked Monday about playoff and figuring out the SEC. I think Texas there might be a little bit more conversation about, maybe Sark's team is starting to get it together. But I think the big takeaway would be that Alabama win, because now you would be almost 2 big games removed from the Florida State performance. And I think they would probably be entrenched right there with Ole Miss as probably the mid-season frontrunner to play for the SEC title if you're picking off Vanderbilt and given that upcoming home schedule with LSU and Oklahoma coming in.
Mm-hmm. Hey, real quick, because I had a vision today, Steven. I like to share my visions. Rarely do they come true, but I had a vision this morning on my morning walk, and it relates to what Parker Freeman is asking. Who does Vanderbilt go for at quarterback after Pavia? And I've said it on this program, Steven. I think the way to do it now is to hit the portal every year. If you're trying to get like an immediate impact quarterback, I think that's the way. I think Vanderbilt will go to the portal for a quarterback. And if, many assumptions here, right? But if Auburn implodes, Hugh Freeze is fired, what about if old Jackson Arnold jumps in that portal? I think, again, a lot of people are going to be out on Jackson Arnold if it implodes at Auburn. I think he's being misused. You don't ask that guy to throw it 40 times on the road a day. I mean, how stupid can you be? But again, people will be out on him. Could you see Jackson Arnold thriving in the Vanderbilt offense post Diego Pavia? I'm not saying he's Diego Pavia because that guy's a unicorn, but I see a lot of traits in his game that I think if Jackson Arnold was in a system similar to what Diego Pavia is running, I think he could have a ton of success.
I would agree with that. I think his mobility, especially, I mean, we see what Pavia can do in this offense. You don't necessarily have to, when Vanderbilt's getting it going, they're not going to ask Pavia to throw it 45 times a game. I think that gets at the interesting angle, and I think Parker's asking a good question. It's an attractive spot for a quarterback. I mean, Tim Beck's a heck of a play caller, and this was true, back when he was at New Mexico State and even before that. It's an attractive offense to have an opening to go be a starter for a successful play caller. And I'm sure Vanderbilt can fill in around the quarterback too. The other thing is, and if you look at the percentages of starters across college football, it is over half of the teams are starting transfers. And it's actually probably closer to 60% this year. So everybody's going to be looking for a transfer quarterback. And I think we're far enough into the portal era that quarterback is the one plug and play place. You don't necessarily want to have to do that on the line of scrimmage, but I think we see teams that are like a quarterback away. look at what Indiana's doing last year with Rourke. They're doing it with Mendoza, Miami with Carson Beck. Right quarterback, you can find there's so many options in the portal. You can find one and they hit, whereas the other positions are a little more, you'd probably like for them to be homegrown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's fair. All right, Stephen. Anything else before we jump off on this one?
The 5-star John Mateer lock of the week.
Yeah.
Hook 'em. Give me Texas, Mike.
Why did I even ask? Of course you're going to go Texas. You know what?
I had to, Mike, I think I've hit 2 in a row. Feeling pretty good about 3. Like I said, that look is in my eye. I'm motivated. So I'm taking Texas to be the 5-star John Mateer lock of the week.
No surprise. That should be written in stone. Shout out Steven and shout out JP for getting this together. Today's shout outs go to Cousin JR, Too Slick, Nick Anderson. Sorry about the finals. Steven Up and Cousin Rick. We appreciate each and every one of you. Before we go, Steven, as always, remind the cousins, where can they follow you and where can they find your work?
Absolutely. You can follow me and read all my work at Athlon Sports. By the way, I am working on a article regarding highly regarded anticipated quarterbacks that have disappointed on there, Arch Manning being one of them. So I would hope everyone checks that out later this week, looking at reasons why they struggled and reasons why they can turn it around. So little shameless self-promotion, Athlon Sports, and at Athlon Sports, or at Athlon Steven on Twitter, Steven LCFB over on Facebook and Instagram.
All right. Thank you so much, Stephen. We'll be back in just a couple of hours with Cousin Shane for the latest SEC mailbag. It'll be at 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 Central, provided, of course, Cousin Shane's off the golf course in time. But until then,
like Hugh Freeze on the golf course. What?
That's who he's out there with on the bye week. So we'll catch each and every one of you. We appreciate you. We'll see you here in a bit. Bye-bye.
Hey, buddy, this beer's for you, Mike, and Cousin Shane. That SEC podcast loves the Pirate, and the Pirate loves that SEC podcast. Hail State.